Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Over 7,500 primary schools are already using Kapow Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to kapowprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So welcome to the show, Jake, and good afternoon to all our listeners. This is the Saturday lunch show with me, Famida Choudhary, live on Teachers Talk Radio. So I just started off with saying that classrooms today are getting busier, expectations rising, many educators wondering, can evidence-informed instruction truly transform the learning experience for both teachers and students? And joining me today is someone who lives and breathes this mission. Yes, it is Jake, a passionate educator, a research ed speaker, and a powerful advocate for effective teaching grounded in cognitive science. Jake, welcome to the show. And I'm so glad and excited to go ahead with this conversation, because it was just that I did try to get you on air, but due to certain issues, you weren't available. And finally, you are here.
Famida, yeah, I do have to formally apologise. I am sorry. Life's been very busy at the moment. Just in the middle of moving house. So I've just moved from Sharjah to Dubai, and looking forward to my next adventure. So it'll probably be coming in the coming weeks, but I've just accepted a new position down in Dubai. And I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for your patience. And I'm happy to talk today. Can't wait.
And I'm so glad. I would just want to share my personal experience. I moved from Sharjah to Dubai for, I think, 5 years back. And I must tell you, it's a whole lot of difference. And I'm sure you're going to love Dubai more, because that's my personal experience.
I'll miss many things about Sharjah, but there's one thing I won't miss about Sharjah is the traffic.
Yes, I do agree with you. I second that completely, because I have been, traveling 2 hours to 2.5 hours. But when I came here in Dubai, it's like so much, it's so great, not only saving time, but your energy, because traveling and just getting stuck in traffic gets you so tired at the end of the day.
I can't imagine how those poor workers, working 10 hours a day, then traveling home, takes 2 hours to get back to Sharjah, on the best of days. So, very tiring, definitely.
Of course. So how's the weekend going, and are you surviving the heat of Dubai, secondly?
Oh, yeah, it's ramping up, isn't it? Getting into the 50s. I think I got the message today on social media. It's the first official day of summer. Did you see that on the internet today?
Yes.
I think first day of solstice or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
We're in for a long summer, aren't we? When is it? It's probably around September. Probably starts to cool off that little bit. But, as most people do, they like to travel away from Dubai during the summer, and that's what maybe I'll be doing for a little bit. I'm going to go to Brazil, and I'm going to go there for a couple of weeks with my wife. But it's very, very hot at the moment. But the air conditioning does a great job here, doesn't it?
Yeah. Though I don't travel much, like I get the summer vacation, but
Yeah,
I prefer staying back here and enjoying not the heat, but yes, I plan out stuff for my kiddos,
yeah,
and
yeah, absolutely.
yet
Oh, there's plenty to
there's a
do.
whole lot that we can do staying back here as well. I'm sure you agree to that as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. There's 101 things you can do here. Plenty to keep your kids entertained as well.
Yes. So let's set the foundation for today's conversation, Jake. In your own words, I want to know, what does evidence informed instruction mean to you?
Yeah, right into it. So, look, evidence informed instruction to me, it means using a robust, growing body of research from mainly cognitive psychology, but I also say there's dribs and drabs of neuroscience, some educational research as well. It explains how students learn most effectively. It's not about following the trends, about oh, this is the next best thing. But it's actually grounded in how our brains actually acquire and retain and utilize knowledge. There was a couple of things that spoke to me when I thought about this question, and I think it's Paul Kirschner who puts it nicely. It's that learning fundamentally is a change in long-term memory, and so when I first heard that, I thought that was quite simple, quite
Mm-hmm.
unique. But it's a simple principle that has deep implications, meaning that activities that may seem engaging to
Mm-hmm.
students or provide them to be productive momentarily doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually learning. There's actually a cognitive architecture that we sort of have to have a mental model as teachers.
And I think it really aligns with what many of us would feel in the classroom, that just because students are busy or smiling doesn't always mean that learning is taking place.
Absolutely.
Hmm. So, moving ahead with the evidence informed learning, teaching that I was talking about, um, I think something that the question that is now just wanting I want you to answer is, many teachers feel overwhelmed by new research, or I feel they would rather want to just take up what is done already and go ahead. So how can they cut through and find some strategies that would be genuinely useful?
So just finding strategies, let me clarify your question. Finding strategies that are generally useful.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that
And,
question?
and
Sorry.
actually coming to the topic, basically, I wanted to ask when we said that teaching smarter and not harder. So
Mm,
I'm looking at, if we because you know how it is teaching here, I'm sure in any part of the world for that matter, how teaching has evolved currently and how much teachers are doing for that point. So if I'm looking at even looking at research at one point of place, or the other ways of literally uh, getting to teaching.
mm. So, well, I'll go back to what you said. Teaching smarter, not harder, was
Hmm.
essentially something that I live by, and something also I would say, yeah, less is more as well. Something I like to do, but essentially, look, uh, the cognitive science reveals like we've got limits and capabilities in cognitive architecture, and it's especially in working memory. And this was something that was really profound to me when I was sort of reading a couple of books on cognitive load theory, and that seems to be quite the popular book at the moment in terms of, or quite the popular theory amongst evidence informed instruction. And so by understanding these principles or limitations, teachers can design lessons that avoid overloading students. But I also say this: knowing a little bit more about cognitive load theory, knowing that you can overload students, teachers can be easily overloaded as well. And so
Mhm.
it's not only important to not overload the students in front of you, but for yourself as well.
Mhm.
So if you want to implement all these nice evidence-based instruction, doing it all at once, it's not going to stick. And so there's been times over the last few years where I've tried to put too many things in at one time, and I would find maybe a couple of weeks later it feels like juggling balls. For me, you juggle the ball and then you may drop one and then you pick it up, and then you drop, juggle and again, and then you drop another one, and then it just eventually wasn't working. So look, these action steps, just taking time, taking it slow, doing it incrementally, but doing it purposefully, and just implementing the evidence-informed instruction, whether it's retrieval practice, check for understanding, whatever it may be, but doing it slowly and doing it at a atomatized level where you're doing just one little routine and you're breaking it down into several parts and knowing what each part does in order to make sure it does become a habit. I find that that's most useful, instead of just trying to do everything at once. Just take one bit, break it down into little parts, make it manageable, because we know that classrooms are complex, and many things happening at one time, and just do one thing at a time. It feels like common sense to me as well, Famida, when I read these books. It's something that we do in our daily lives. You don't do everything at once when you're learning to drive a car. You don't press the accelerator, turn the gear stick, and everything that you do. Don't learn it all at once. You do it bit by bit. And I find that's quite comprehensive in my view.
Absolutely, Jake. I do agree with you. And I like the way when you said, breaking down. It's so important for chunking things in that matter, making it simpler and going a bit by bit. So I think the need of the hour is so, because as teachers, as you just mentioned, classrooms are dynamic. Even I think teachers themselves are doing so much besides teaching. It's like looking at maybe documenting, or really looking for those problem based scenarios in their class, and then going ahead with researching on it, and then coming to certain conclusions for that matter. So of course, I think the manner in which currently a teacher and an educator can look at is getting things done in chunks or in bit by bit in classes and applying it. So on that note, I would say that is like even a mindset adjustment, I mean to say, for
Yeah,
teachers.
yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll
yeah.
also say this as well. I mean, information comes hard and fast, especially in these international schools in Dubai and in the UAE. So many changes happening. It's such a dynamic environment. New enrollments here and there, students coming in and out. And so you're always going to be overburdened as a teacher, and not only in the UAE, but everywhere else in the world. And it's also important to, have strategies up your sleeve, to, have things written down, but also just take in things bit by bit as well. I think that's also important.
Absolutely. So looking at a little bit of more practical steps to be embedded in classrooms, like Jake, could you like walk us through a few powerful strategies grounded in research, as you just mentioned a few books again, that
Mm.
teachers could actually start, I'm just literally saying, start trying by Monday. So,
Yeah.
or like, yeah, something
Okay.
to begin with.
Well, if you've taught something on Thursday or Friday this week, asking students a question about the content or the concept or the skill that they learnt on that Thursday or Friday on the Monday, is actually grounded in research. Retrieval practice is what it's formally known as. And it's regular low stakes quizzing, or it could be cold calling. And essentially what they say in the research, to put it simply, is that if you are to ask the student to recall that information from long-term memory rather than retell them, it actually strengthens their memory, rather than you just regurgitating it again from that Thursday or Friday lesson on the Monday. You're asking the student to try and provide what they remember. And so that is actually one way that they can strengthen their long-term memory. They bring it back into short-term memory. They're consciously thinking about it, and while they're storing it back into long-term memory. You're giving that real-time feedback in that moment, whether they got it right or wrong, adjusting that knowledge, and then they're putting it back into long-term memory. So that's one thing, retrieval practice, and it can be done in multiple different ways. So, I think that Teach Like a Champion, they have the phrase "do now," and it'll be a set of quiz questions at the start of a lesson. So, and the quiz questions might be pertaining to the lesson before, or the unit before, whatever it may be. So retrieval practice, really, really something that I picked up to start with when talking about evidence-informed instruction. Has been a game changer for myself. I found that things stick that little bit more when I am teaching, and when I am retrieving it to a certain extent, it's becoming more automatic. So the skill might becoming more automatic. For example, in mathematics, so adding and subtracting. Fractions with unrelated denominators, for example. I have my kids doing that in the space of 5 seconds. Whereas before, maybe if I didn't know about this retrieval practice, I might have taught it in a 3-week block and then might have done some end of term revision, and the kids can't even remember what they did. So yeah, that retrieval practice, really, really good in strengthening memory of concepts and skills.
So when you say, Jake, this retrieval practice, I just had one question that just popped
Mhm.
up right now. Is it's that you in every lesson do you do it in a manner, or it is has to be something taught like for a week, as you just mentioned. Maybe you've taught something, a concept, and you've done it like a proper teaching way, and then it is in a lesson by the end of the term or end of the unit that you use it, or how does it go about?
Well, essentially, if you think about it, it can be used in a multitude of ways. I would usually generally have it before the lesson, each lesson, a bit of retrieval practice. And by retrieval practice, it can also be, I feel like retrieval practice and activating prior knowledge go hand in hand a little bit, really, because you're activating prior knowledge when doing retrieval practice. I would do it before every lesson. There's an instance with mathematics doing it's called daily reviews, and this is sort of a concept. I think it's, from what I remember, derived from David McCormick from Australia. He's a teacher, and so what he's derived is that you have like 20 minutes, 20
Okay.
minutes of retrieval practice doing all content areas of mathematics. Every day I've been doing fractions, whole number, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, word related problems every single day. And so what I'm doing there is I'm retrieving that over time, but also doing it every day. So then they're strengthening that memory and doing it maybe before a unit as well. So got a unit of time coming up. So then I might put in some time questions a couple of weeks before, just retrieving that. Hopefully they've, maybe remembered it from grade 4. If they haven't, I can do a quick reteach as well.
Okay.
So it's interesting. It's a great question though, Famida, like asking when to do it, because the context really tells you when you should do it, depending on what your kids know and what your kids remember. And ways to do it as well, as I said, before lessons or as a standalone 20-minute lesson. Hitting a lot of content areas for one subject is ways that I've done it too. So those are the main ways that I've used it before a lesson, and maybe as a standalone little lesson, hitting lots of content areas, specifically in mathematics.
Absolutely, because I'm looking from a point of view for the lower primary or the primary kids, whether it's grade 1 or 2,
Mm.
and if I want to, because maybe they just started school, as in kindergarten would be the
Yeah.
previous year that they've learned. Okay, so for is it different for the little ones as compared to the older ones?
Yeah,
Because
I'd
I
say it's
think
different.
the retrieval practices, I'm sure if you given an example of a math topic, for that
Mm.
matter, for the older ones it would have been a little more different, while if you give a kind of a task to retrieve something from their previous knowledge,
Mm.
you would get something, maybe, to check on that. But when it comes to the little ones, I'm not sure, like as you said, we will have to check first if the topic is done, or how much is covered for that matter,
Yeah,
and
well, when
then
you're thinking about early years or key stage 1,
hmm,
prep 1, 2, it would be way shorter, because we know as younger students they have a shorter working memory, and so
yeah.
it would have to be short, focused tasks with minimal distractions, and perhaps, songs as well, and gestures and all those sorts of things that would really pertain to the early years where embodied cognition is really, really important, is ways that you can use retrieval practice. As I said, it's really context dependent, isn't it? And it's good that you brought that up, that early years is especially different when it comes to key stage 2, 3 and 4.
Exactly. So I think, Jake, our conversation is getting great and interesting, and I have a lot of questions actually to just pose on to you. But
Sure.
we'll take a quick break right now and get back after the break.
No problem.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads, no distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Okay, welcome back, listeners, and welcome to the Saturday Lunch Show. This is with me, Miss Famida Choudhary, and with me I have Jake, which we are having a great and interesting conversation on how basically teachers can teach smarter and not harder. And before the break, we spoke about retrieval practice, how retrieval practice is actually going to strengthen students' learning. And Jake, the question that again is coming on to me, moving ahead. I think I mentioned about, I know that you are a strong advocate of explicit instruction. So I just wanted to know if you could walk us through, like, what could be a well-modeled concept look like in action, like in class or recent, something how you just mentioned about retrieval practice of a math lesson, but something, maybe a recent moment where modeling really made the difference for your students.
Okay. Look, in terms of explicit instruction, my mental model or schema of knowledge in terms of that really gravitates towards, explicit direct instruction. And it's a book by John Hollingsworth and Sylvia Ybarra. And I find it to be an exceptional framework for delivering an explicit lesson or explicit instruction lesson, really. And it has its components. And so it starts off with activating prior knowledge, walking through the learning intention, breaking it down, defining the academic vocabulary within the learning intention. So we are learning to identify nouns. You would actually break that down further, especially with our cohort being English language learners. You would say identify means to find. And then moving on from that, knowing the learning intention, activating prior knowledge after that, asking a worldly knowledge question or maybe a prior knowledge question in terms of what they've learned previously, and then building on that, because what we know from that simple model of memory, knowing that if we bring down something from long-term memory into working memory, it has a greater chance of being processed into long-term memory, whatever we're teaching next, right? So then we would, after the activating prior knowledge, we would go into teaching the concept. And what I would do in my classroom is give a bulletproof definition, as John likes to say, a bulletproof definition of what the concept is. And the example I'm going with here is the noun. So a noun names a person, place, thing, or idea. And I would get the students to say that. Okay, turn and talk to your partners. What does a noun mean? And so getting them to really turn and talk about it, and then give some examples and non-examples, which is really, really important. And Zach Rochelle, his book, Just Tell Them, goes through some really great, ironically, examples and non-examples within his book. And so you would give an example of a noun in a sentence, a non-example, maybe saying that's a verb, and then checking for understanding. So checking for understanding is very, very important as well. And so before we move on to using the skill, learning to identify nouns, we would check if they understand what a noun is. And if they don't understand what a noun is through the checking for understanding question, we don't move ahead. So we're sort of adaptive in the way that we teach. We're teaching explicitly, making sure that 100% students know what a noun is before I go on even to teach the skill. And so I would say, okay, here's a sentence, boys and girls. What is the noun in this sentence? The book is on the table, and maybe there's a couple of nouns there. And so then it might be a multiple choice question. Book and table, is might be an option. And so you'll get them A and B, get them on their mini whiteboards, hold it up. Most of them got A. Okay, good. I can go on and teach the skill of identifying a noun. But if not, if I've got less than 80%, I would have to reteach it. I would go back, hey, boys and girls, this is what a noun is. It names a person, place, thing, or idea. Here's another example. And maybe the example I used perhaps wasn't rich enough. Maybe I'll use an example. The Dubai Mall is big. And so I might use that. I might use that example. And then I'll go and ask them another question, check for understanding question. Okay, boys and girls, what's the noun in this sentence? And then I would go over it until they get it. Once they've got it, then I can move on. And then I'm moving on to teaching the skill. And so the skill would be small, incremental, chunked steps, okay? And it'd be like step 1, read the sentence, okay? So they would read the sentence. Step 2, identify the noun, because we want to use the academic verb that we used in the learning intention. Identify the noun. And then step 3, underline the noun. Okay, so 3 steps, and they've got a multitude of practice problems, and you do some problems with them. And so you're explaining how you're doing it, and then you're asking them after you've done it and you've modeled it with them. You ask them, how did I identify the noun? How did I do it? And you want them talking about how you did it, because it's really, really important that if they're talking about how you did something, instead of, oh, yeah, I just did this, really helps retain the knowledge of the skill. And so that's what I would do. And then I'm checking for understanding of them understanding how I did the skill as well. And so if they can't elaborate, in a good way of how I did the skill, well, then I'm going to show them again. And then they're going to do it with me. And so that's sort of the I do, we do, right? And so I would do one, we do one together, we do one together, and that I do, we do, you do depends on how well they're catching on, and you can start to feel it as a teacher. Most of the students are starting to get it, and then you can sort of let those higher achievers. This is where it's adaptive teaching, right? You've got your high achievers in the classroom. Okay, let them go. They can do the rest. But I'm going to still bring in those students that are still struggling. We're going to do a couple more together, and I can know that those other ones are working independently. They can do the task. And so that's the way I would explicitly teach the concept and then the skill. And then after that, in EDI, explicit direct instruction, it's a closure. So I would close off the lesson. We've done lots of we do. And the closure would be a hinge point question where they would have to do it by themselves. Everyone's doing it independently. And this hinge point question will tell me who I need to work with, who are going to be my tier 2 students. And so I go through the closure question. Okay, boys and girls, here's 2 sentences. Identify the nouns in these 2 sentences. I'm not going to help you with these 2. This is going to help me who I need to work with today. And so everyone goes through it. They all show me their answers. Maybe I've got 2 or 3 students who didn't get 100% correct. Those are the 3 students I'm working with in independent practice. And with the rest of the students, independent practice, it's really powerful going through this framework, because as soon as I started using it, independent practice was absolutely silent. There was no one talking. You could see everyone working. And that's because they really understood what you had taught them. You haven't rushed through the lesson. You've taken the time to teach the concept, then teach the skill, and then ask them, how did you do the skill? And then I've got only a fair, like, only a couple of students that really need that extra help. And you know who those students might be maybe before the lesson, but you're just going to double check anyway. And so, yeah, following that framework, it's been really, really life-changing for me in terms of inside the classroom. Teaching explicitly, that would be the way that I do it. And that wouldn't be the same way that I would teach it, a couple of lessons later. We'll be building on that idea. So then everyone would retrieve that, maybe in a retrieval question or two. A couple of days later, space out that practice, and then we're building on that idea. Okay, we're going to identify nouns, and then we're also going to find the verb within the lesson, or whatever it is. I'm just making this up here, but the examples. But
two things. There are a few questions that are just coming to my mind because I've done this topic too. The first question, Jake, I wanted to ask, because as with the little ones, when we do a certain topic, I tend to gamify it a little. So when we did like nouns, for that matter, I played this game with them. It's name place animal thing. So it was done through a Padlet wall, and I had my children, like, we spin the wheels, stick on a letter, and then they have to think about the name place animal thing that comes to their mind, and they immediately note it down on the Padlet wall. And then there's a kind of a discussion that happens, because sometimes we would get that examples and non-examples that you mentioned.
yeah.
So my question to you would be, like, if you do something like this, and it might take, like, a longer time, because you're clarifying their misconceptions at this moment. So where would we fit this up in a lesson? So is it like, I'm sure it's okay to go ahead and do it, but yes, but I'm like, does gamification just take away the what you say, learning in a lesson, or is it okay to go ahead and do something like that?
Well, it depends on the purpose of the gamification, right? And
Hmm.
you've got to sort of atomize the actual activity itself. Okay, so are the students sitting down, and are they getting up, walking around, putting a word on a
The
sticky note,
wall.
putting it on
Mhm.
underneath a name, person, place?
Mhm.
Um, and so you're thinking to yourself, what parts of that is pertaining to learning?
Mhm.
What is making a change in long-term memory? Now, I know for a fact, I think getting the students moving in lower years is brilliant. I think that's a great idea.
Mm.
And what we could do in terms when I'm thinking about lower years is using intentional gestures. So
Mhm.
when I teach, parts of speech, I always have a pre-planned gesture or routine that I'll get the students to do. And so I know, because in body cognition, getting the bodies moving is really powerful in terms for learning. So you just got to think about, okay, what are the parts within that gamification? What are the good things about it? What are the things that maybe I can move away that is not really necessary for them
Mhm.
for learning? And so maybe perhaps you would try and think around that. That's a great idea, having it on the Padlet. What you
Mhm.
can get them to do
Move around.
is you can choose some gestures. So they're going to gesture to you a place. And what I like to do, I can't really, because it's an audio podcast, I can't really show you. But what I would do for person, I would point to myself with two fingers. So
Uh-huh.
person, place, I would hold my open palms up, as in like this is the place.
Get it.
Two
Yeah.
open palms up.
Mhm.
Thing, I would try and put my two hands close together, as if to say, "Oh, I'm holding something." And
Mhm.
then the fourth thing that a noun names is an idea, and then I point my finger to my head as if I'm thinking. And
Okay.
so, what you
So
could
yeah.
do, yeah, you get the kids moving, but you're not getting the kids moving up and moving around the classroom. You're getting them moving by sitting down. So you're really harnessing that attention. You're alleviating maybe some distractions, because some students might take a long time to get up and move to the front of the classroom. And so you're getting them moving, sitting down, right? So that's maybe one way I can think of it. But again, context dependent. I don't know what your learners are. I don't know what the classroom looks like. And so that would be very presumptuous for me to say that, oh, this is what you should do. I really need to, be there and understand the context and the
The cohort.
environment. But that's something that I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
Yeah. Also, Jake, when we look at such strategies to be implemented, what is your take on inclusivity? Basically, I'm looking at in the class itself, as you mentioned now, the cohort. Like I would have, I'm sure many educators, we all agree we have different learners, as you've already mentioned about high achievers and the average learners and low achievers. But contrasting to this, I am sure we would have an EAL learner, or I would have, someone with a student of determination. So when we are doing like these whole class strategies, how do you focus on? I know you mentioned about adaptive teaching,
Yeah.
but I'm looking at from differentiation point of view.
Oh, of course. Look, it depends. Like some students, unfortunately, whatever you do teach, tend to miss the mark in some regard, and they will be your tier 3 students, and you'll be well aware of them.
Yes.
And you will know that you'll have maybe a differentiated curriculum set for them within the classroom, and they might have their teacher aide. That's something that that adaptive teaching is aware of, and I think that for any teacher, there is some circumstances where that might need to happen. But I'm talking about maybe those fringe students that are just on the cusp, of being able to get it and know perhaps maybe they will. There's some strategies where I might de-escalate my check for understanding questions, and so by de-escalating a question, I might not leave it open for them to reply with an explanation. I might de-escalate my check for understanding question with a multiple choice. And so there's instances are, okay, can you tell me what a noun is, boys and girls? And then I might have a few students that might not get that. I might de-escalate the question to, is a noun names a person, place, thing, or idea, or is it an action word? And so I would ask the student, A or B, which one is it? And so those are some ways that I would cater for those differences. But in terms of tier 3 students, differentiated curriculum is something that sometimes happens in lower primary and upper primary as well. And obviously intervention programs as well. So, I like to think that, teachers can't be heroes all the time in terms of having instruction that's going to hit all targets.
All targets, yeah.
But we can try our best to maximize our instruction where it hits, if not everyone, but if
at
not,
least most of the students.
most of the students. I think that it would be quite arrogant to say that it's going to be 100% every time, because we know in reality it's not. So.
But I think you clearly pointed out these things because this is something definitely that we as educators here in Dubai are very mindful of. As you mentioned, if there's a certain category of the students in the student of determination, and we know that they are on modified curriculum, we would have a learning support assistant or a teacher mentor already there to support and scaffold the learning in class.
Absolutely.
So yes, I just wanted you to bring that point up that we in the different learners, the cohort that we do have these students as well, and of course they are not neglected, but in fact it is taken into consideration, and the lesson is built up in that manner.
Yeah, I will say there's some what we used to do in terms of differentiation that I do probably disagree with is differentiating by task design. And so giving different tasks for different students, I would say it waters down your instruction, and it actually makes teaching harder, and also harder to find what students know as well. I know that, it used to be quite the thing back in the 2010s where, You might have a task for your lows, mediums, and highs. So you have 3 different tasks. You're running around the classroom. You're checking in with students. You're checking in with one group. You had a focus group. The other two groups got 2 different tasks. You might think, okay, well, that's good because I've differentiated for them.
But
However,
it's difficult,
knowing
yeah.
that what we know about attention and the cognitive architecture of how students learn, well, it's most of the time those other 2 groups are going to be maybe off task, talking to their friends while doing the
Correct.
work, not really soaking it in. So that's something I would disagree with in terms of differentiation, is differentiating by task. I highly suggest doing the same task for everyone, but then differentiating in terms of the way that you instruct and adapting.
Supporting them while they do it,
Yeah,
basically, rather than putting it completely on a different. I too agree to what you say, because practically when you do these strategies in lessons, I think when everyone is on the task, you have what you say, a better percentage of engagement in lessons, and also
absolutely.
embedding of routines, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, like, if you follow this on a daily basis, and you've maintained a kind of consistency in doing it, children also get used to it, and they'll have their thinking in a different way.
Absolutely, and then the kids aren't thinking, "Oh, I'm in the kids know. Kids know if they're 8-year-olds know if they're in the low group. To be honest, and so I
Yes.
think that it's a self-esteem issue as well if you're doing that. So I think, and it's also as well a positive of having everyone on the same concept and skill is that it's a rich discussion as well. You're able to build in and scaffold the discussion within the whole class. Everyone's on the same task and the same skill. Yeah, it can have some really rich discussions.
Second thing that I had in my mind, Jake, is I know you spoke about Turn and Talk, where they have a moment to discuss or share their ideas, and be a part of collaborating with their peers or classmates. But what other strategies you think could have collaboration or collaborative opportunities in a lesson,
Collaborative opportunities in a lesson. Look, I
with
think,
the retrieval practice and other steps that you've mentioned?
well, in terms of collaboration, I think, look, collaboration. You can have your turn and talk, and I know Nathaniel Swain. I don't know if he's named the term pair squares as well. Pair squares is where you have the 2 front students pair up with the 2 students behind
Yes,
them.
yes. Mm.
And so having those students collaborating in a way as well. But having group work is something that has been on my mind for the last academic year, I would say, because, once I think teachers get into this evidence-based instruction realm, is that, a lot of explicit instruction is really heavily advocated, and the group work is really left to the side, because I think most gurus would say that, it's a bit of a social fluff, or that, not all students are paying attention. But I think there's some merit in having some group work towards the end of a unit, in particular once the students have really comprehended and consolidated the concept and skill of what have you been teaching. Um, Having
Basically
them come together and,
showcasing their learning
yeah,
in
and just really, yeah, showcasing that learning that they've done. But I will also say this: I've tried it, and what I've had to do, and what I highly suggest is, being heavily explicitly guiding the groups as well. Make
Yes.
sure that facilitation of groups, there's clearly designed roles within each group. And then you are present, knowing what each group is doing at the same time. So, yeah, it's a really complex thing to do, to be honest, as a teacher. It's really, really hard to get right, if not right at all. And it's something that I really am working with as well, trying to get what works best. And it's really dependent on your cohort as well. So you might have some students with really challenging behavior, and you may not be able to ever let them be in a group independently, because you know that what things might happen. So, yeah, it's really, really tricky. But group work it can happen, but I would never put the students in a group when it's the start of a new unit or a new learning task. I would always maybe leave it to the end of the unit or the end of the task where they really understand the idea, so then all the minds can really work together and work collaboratively. That's something that I think about often.
Yeah, I think I would go with this, and a key takeaway that a group work or collaboration for that matter is essential. But when we look at, if we are looking at learning outcomes, and we are looking at student learning outcomes to be at a particular level, so it would be great if they have completed a particular topic, and then we want them to work on like maybe 21st century skills, in for that matter presentation, communication, or coming up and displaying their learning. So we can definitely go ahead with group tasks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so, Jake, we'll just take a news break. And after the news break, I will ask you two more questions. And I'm really glad that you made it. I'm so happy that we are having this conversation, because I'm sure many of the educators would have these questions. And I'm so thankful to you for mentioning those books that you're reading. And I'm sure we all can just, go ahead with reading those books that you have recommended. So we'll
No
take a
problem.
quick
Thank you, Famida. Thank you for
news
having
break
me.
and be back, Jake, with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Over 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads, no distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
BBC News Education Editor reports that students should be ready to be shocked and offended at university. This is according to Arif Ahmed from the Office for Students, which regulates universities. He told the BBC that exposure to views which might offend is part of the process of education. His comments come as the OFS published guidance for universities in England on how a new law, designed to protect free speech, will work when it comes into force from August. But the National Union of Students UK said the latest guidance was just more nonsense playing into the so-called culture wars. NUS UK President Amira Campbell said, "I am disappointed in the governing bodies who have prioritised this over protecting and supporting marginalised students." The guidance on the new law was issued after universities requested clarity from the OFS on how to best uphold freedom of speech after the University of Sussex was fined £585,000 for failing to do so in March. Full details and more comment can be found online. Schools Week reports that the government has been urged to investigate free school meal uptake in special schools after new research revealed 1/4 of children are currently missing out. 1 in 4 children in special schools eligible for a free meal are not taking it due to unmet dietary and eating needs, according to the AdaptEd study led by the University of Hertfordshire. The study, conducted in partnership with the University of Essex and the charity School Food Matters, also found that 1 in 5 infant children in special schools are also not accessing universal free school meals. This is compared to 1 in 8 infant children in mainstream schools. The report said that children with SEND, especially those with restrictive diets, often rely on access to familiar or safe foods, which are not always available. It also warned that some children may go the entire school day without eating properly as a result, leading to difficulty concentrating in class, increased anxiety, and other health problems. The AdaptEd report further urges the government to do more work on making food inclusive, arguing that special schools have little guidance on food policy, such as how to make reasonable adjustments or meet school food standards. It also recommends the government use the Child Poverty Task Force to investigate low free school meal uptake in special schools. The Department for Education was approached for comment but did not respond. Online media outlet Time Out covers news that 2 London schools have been nominated for World's Best School 2025. The 2 state-funded schools in Enfield and Hounslow were nominated as finalists for the prestigious Global Prize and are competing against 50 schools from around the world. Schools in India, Colombia, Nigeria and the USA are also in the running. 5 prizes are up for grabs for community collaboration, environmental action, innovation, overcoming adversity, supporting healthy lives. Winners will be chosen by a panel of experts in October, and a public vote is also now open where people can vote for the Community Choice Award from the 50 finalists. Winners will be invited to attend a summit in Abu Dhabi in November to share their best practices with policymakers from around the world. London's Deputy Mayor for Children and Families, Joanne McCartney, said, "Both schools are shining examples of the life-changing impact education can have in our capital, as we build a better London for everyone." The UK government has pledged more money for crumbling schools as part of a 10-year infrastructure strategy, set to also include hospitals and courts. The BBC says the government will spend £9 billion a year over the next decade to fix and replace buildings, but it is yet to publish a list identifying the projects. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Welcome back, listeners, to our final segment for today's show. It's been such a powerful conversation with Jake on teaching smarter, not harder. And before I wrap up, I have 2 final questions, but I do see our listeners are, I can see them commenting and responding. But if our listeners also have any questions, please do post it, and we would love to take it in case we get it in this last segment. So, Jake, my first question to you, I mean to say towards the end, is if there's one shift you hope every teacher makes after today's conversation, big or small, what would that be?
If they were to make any change at all, please make it a very small change. Don't go and try and change lots of things in your classroom practice.
Okay, that's a good takeaway, definitely. I will also go and read it. And finally, what keeps you hopeful and inspired as an educator today, despite the challenges we all know are real?
What keeps me hopeful? What keeps me hopeful is that there's an ever-growing body of research for us as educators to know what to do as best bets in the classroom. And if we are to take those in and obviously work on those, we tend to, as this is subjective opinion, but myself as an educator, I've felt myself to be more happy with my job and enjoy my job a whole lot more, because I've gone and maybe put in a little bit of an initial effort. So I guess there is a little investment phase, but I will say with the payout phase is huge when it comes to evidence-informed instruction, because it is so finite and discrete and to the point. I find that if you are to gravitate towards evidence-informed instruction, it really does pay dividends in the classroom.
Great. Jake, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and your incredible energy. I do see our listeners are yet commenting, liking our show, and I have no questions as so far. But today's discussion has reminded us all that when we align teaching with how students actually learn, the classroom becomes not just effective, but joyful. So, to our listeners, whether it's Monday morning retrieval practice or using gestures to teach parts of speech, I hope you're walking away with something concrete to try and be confident and that you are not alone in this journey. Any last advice, Jake, you want to give all of us?
Last advice, take one thing at a time, do it slowly, do it purposefully, and just enjoy teaching and learning. It's a wonderful journey.
This is Famida Choudhary signing off from the Saturday Lunch Show on Teachers Talk Radio. Until next time, keep teaching, keep reflecting, and keep making an impact. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. We'll meet up next Saturday for my show.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.